Now it's time to move to the second speaker, Nicoletta Papadopoulou. Nicoletta Papadopoulou is a scientific officer at the Nutrition and Food Innovation Unit of the European Food Safety Authority. She is the team leader for the molecular characterization of genetically modified organisms. And since 2016, she has joined EFSA and contributed to panel guidances and scientific opinions for the risk assessment of the genetic modified plants, including the opinions on the synthetic biology and the new genomic techniques. So please, Nicoletta, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I will give you an overview of the different techniques used mainly in plant biotechnology, but also to modify other organisms. And I will try to also explain the principles of synthetic biology. All of the talk is based on the work of EFSA scientists and the GMO panel of the last decade. So I'm trying to see how to move on. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. So I will start with explaining some definitions that are used in the context of the EU policy framework. Of course, describe techniques used to produce genetically modified plants. Now, these main techniques definitions were introduced in the EC report published in April 2001. And they lead to genetically modified organisms, and they're mainly grouped in two categories: the established genomic techniques that I will refer to as EGTs, and these are the techniques that have been developed prior to the Commission Directive 2001 for the risk assessment and the regulation of genetically modified organisms, when this GMO legislation has already been adopted. Therefore, any technique according to the EU policy framework that was developed after 2001, after that existing GMO legislation was adopted, is referred to as new genomic technique, NGTs, even though, as you will see also in the talk, most of the techniques under the group of NGTs were actually developed in science and applied after 2012. Towards the end, I will also explain how both of these techniques from both of these groups can be used in other approaches to develop more complex and new traits, such as synthetic biology approaches. Yes. So here is the legal framework we are talking about, based on which EFSA GMO panel has developed different scientific guidance document, technical notes for the technologies used, and has adopted several scientific opinions for food and feed use of GM plants and the derived products, as well as for the deliberate release into the environment of genetically modified organisms. Now, EFSA's risk assessment is based on 4 pillars, if I may call them, within which the GMO panel, ad hoc experts, EFSA scientists are working on. And these are described here that formulate the outcome of the scientific opinions. They include the data sets that are provided for the molecular characterization of the organisms, which is related to the genetic modification, the expression of the modified DNA sequences, and the newly expressed proteins that lead to the desired trait. They are complemented by a set of agronomic and phenotypic data that describe the characteristics that are intended in the plant, and the compositional data based on a comparative analysis of the GM to the non-GM comparator, and are concluded with a large food and feed risk assessment of data described by allergenicity, toxicological, and dietary exposure and nutritional studies. In addition, our applications also include data for the environmental risk assessment, although the applications that EFSA has been assessing, of course, exclude cultivation in the EU. Environmental risk assessment is also complemented by the post-market monitoring. Now, the risk assessment performed by EFSA and the GMO panel, however, is not only limited to the technique, as you understand from this puzzle, but also focuses quite a lot on the trait of the derived food and feed final product. Now, giving a schematic to understand the differences of the established genomic techniques and the new genomic techniques used in plant biotechnology, you may see that mainly we have the outcome of two groups of plants, transgenic plants and cisgenic or intragenic. The biggest difference here is that we see that any source of exogenous DNA from any organism, could be a protein or a DNA sequence from a microorganism that is intended to be introduced in a plant, may be introduced with the established genomic techniques with a direct delivery to the plant or with agrobacterium transformation. The integration is called random integration, since these techniques do not target a specific location in the genome of the plant. Similarly, if the DNA source is deriving from a cisgene or intragene, this means from the pool of genes within a crossable plant species, they can also be introduced into the plant using established genomic techniques, also by so-called, and shown here, random integration. Now, the difference that is depicted to the new genomic techniques is mainly the targeted integration that is offered by these techniques. So, the common characteristic of random integration is in the established genomic techniques, while targeted integration of either an exogenous DNA sequence or a DNA sequence from the gene pool of crossable plant species can also be introduced. So also in the rest of the talk, we will use the term transgenesis, transgenic plants, for the classical GMOs that we have been assessing and seeing so far under the directive, while new genomic techniques will focus on plants that have used more precise techniques for targeted integration, using either a cisgene or an intragene, as well as genome editing. So the difference between cisgene and intragene I will explain later. So here just to explain that in the case of genome editing under the same group, there is no exogenous DNA introduced in the plant. And this of course has raised different considerations for risk assessors, since in this case there is no exogenous DNA, there is no random integration that in the other cases may interrupt endogenous genes in the plant. In the case of intragenesis and cisgenesis, as you see, always the gene derives from the plant gene pool. So these are crossable species, and the difference is that when a transgene is introduced, you may have a possible new function not found in the pool of these plants. When an intragene is introduced, you may have an existing function, but at a different level and specificity. So maybe an expression of a gene at another developmental level compared to the non-modified plant. In the case of the cisgene, you introduce an existing function at the same level that is specifically conserved within this plant family. This is not the case with targeted mutagenesis in genome editing plants, where there is no introduction of another gene from any other species, but rather a modification of an endogenous DNA sequence. So the GMO panel opinion, already from 2012, that was then updated in 2022, had concluded that similar hazards can be associated with cisgenic and conventionally bred bred plants, while novel hazards could be associated if an intragene or cisgene is introduced with a random integration. Therefore, the GMO panel concluded that on a case-by-case, lesser amount of data will be needed for an event-specific data for the risk assessment of the food and feed applications. In the case of NGTs used for intragenesis and cisgenesis, the analysis of a GMO panel opinion that was published in 2022 showed that the same conclusions would apply since 2012, and that there is one new technology, CRISPR-Cas, that could potentially also be used in these applications and have consequences on the risk assessment of the intra and cisgenic plants and on the potential unintended effects, because it can minimize the potential interruption in the endogenous plant genome and the potential rearrangement that can be found by transgene. This is because an NGT by genome editing can introduce a modification in a so-called safe harbor, where it is previously studied to not interrupt a function existing in the plant. The sources of the potential unintended effect in the case of established genomic techniques, as seen here in the slides, could be either interruption of a gene, a rearrangement of the gene, or an integration of an exogenous DNA elsewhere in the genome, not in the intended locus. So in the EFSA scientific opinion of 2022, hazards derived from a plant developed by cisgenesis or by cisgenesis are similar to those achieved by conventional plant breeding, while hazards that may be assessed in intragenic plants are similar to those from transgenics when such techniques are used. The development of cisgenic and intragenic plants through NGTs can minimize alterations in the genome, the so-called linkage drag effect when using classical breeding of a gene introgression, and therefore the guidelines currently used for risk assessment were considered sufficient and adequate, but partially applicable for the assessment of these plants, which therefore could be adapted and on a case-by-case less data may be needed. As a general conclusion, the EFSA GMO panel considered that these existing guidelines can be adopted and new considerations based on the technique can be developed in the future. Towards this future risk assessment and towards the understanding of how we can adapt our risk assessment methodologies to consider applications by new genomic techniques, EFSA was requested by the European Commission to provide a statement with possible criteria for the risk assessment of plants produced by targeted mutagenesis, cisgenesis and intragenesis. This means EFSA had to consider, did not produce a new scientific opinion, but had to consider the assessment of the previous opinions by the GMO panel on site-directed nucleases, targeted mutagenesis, that is, cisgenesis, intragenesis, as well as SynBio, since some of the techniques can also be used in SynBio approaches, and these were the opinions developed between 2012 and 2022. Now, just to remind before I introduce what these criteria are, that site-directed nucleases 1, 2, and SDN2-like techniques are those that we refer to mainly as resulting into genome-edited plants. Using CRISPR-Cas that you are more familiar with, one can modify in a very targeted way a given gene, and the endogenous gene can be totally or partially inactivated, that is in the case of SDN1, or it can be precisely modified through genome editing or through base editing, and that is SDN2. In both cases, there is no exogenous DNA sequences added to the genome, and the modified version of the endogenous gene correspond to different alleles of this gene. So as a result, a pre-existing encoded protein can be inactivated, modified, or you may have a gain or a new gain of function. This means that if a mutation is achieved by these techniques and not by STN3, this same mutation could have existed also in a plant variety by conventional breeding. What CRISPR-Cas does is to accelerate this process of breeding, and of course, in case of more complex modification, this acceleration can be quite significant and should be taken into consideration also for the risk assessment of those plants. So in EFSA's decision tree, the proposed decision tree that we were required to develop, we tried to capture possible cases on whether there is exogenous or not DNA introduced in these plants. So this is the main criteria one in order to be able to progress in the decision tree. If there is no exogenous DNA, already you see here that we are talking about an edited plant that will then be assessed based on criterion 5 and 6, meaning based directly on what is the history of use of the consumption and what is the function and structure of this allele that has been modified. In the case of the left-hand side, we go that there is an introduction of exogenous DNA. EFSA would assess and build a data package depending on the level of modification and integration that is delivered to this plant. These are criteria to assess whether the DNA sequence comes from the breeder's gene pool, so whether we would have a cisgenic or an intragenic plant that can also be crossed within this species by breeding, what is the type of integration, and if there is an unintended interruption, leading again to criterion 5 and 6, that is to actually study the introduced trait for the risk assessment. So here, building on the data package that is needed, requirements would need to be developed for these plants, and this was not the purpose of the EFSA statement already published, but a proposal. Now, what we have already considered, and this is in the work of EFSA done to map and consider assessment of synthetic biology plants, is that we see there is an evolution from old, current to future plant biotechnology applications that may have simple genome-edited plants or those techniques that can be used also in more complex developments, such as synthetic biology. So here what we saw is that synthetic biology strategies can apply an extra approach of modeling and analytical, it's an analytical approach to improve predictability of the engineering, but the basic techniques that can be used could be similar to current GMOs. The traits may be known or new to nature. They may introduce complex modifications, new genetic material, and all with a characteristic of an engineering cycle that is depicted later that needs to be considered in the case of plant SynBio assessment. So EFSA progressed with a 10-year horizon scan to develop recommendations on whether the guidelines that we currently have for GMOs can be considered sufficient and adequate in case these technologies are used for a synthetic biology plant application. The horizon scan has shown that mainly the technologies, as I said, are transgenes and genome editing. There are new traits found in these applications, mainly mainly focusing on plant food and feedstocks for increased nutrition, or plants engineered to have increased yield, tolerance to biotic and abiotic stress, and you have usually multiple number of genes introduced. Now, out of this horizon scan, different cases were considered as case studies for EFSA's assessment of the adequacy of the existing guidelines in more realistic and relevant scenarios. And these selected case studies have helped to elaborate the opinions and how the synthetic biology applications may be assessed in the future. Currently, there is no such application clearly employing the synthetic biology approach. To make it a bit more clear, the synthetic biology approach starts with a customer idea, a specific desired product, can employ a list of parts, devices, and systems already available. It incorporates a step of mathematical modeling and design, as well as a testing phase of a prototype assembly construction for gene synthesis or editing and integration into the plant, and leads to the experimental validation. Until the customer idea is achieved, this design, build, test, and learn cycle in the SynBio approach that is defined is repeated. So the key element is the difference in the strategy to implement an engineering cycle in biology and the mathematical modeling and design. Out of the opinions on the SynBio, EFSA concluded that no potential novel hazards compared to established techniques were found. The current requirements are adequate and sufficient, but not always applicable. Therefore, beyond the current risk assessment methodologies, other risk assessment approaches may be needed to assess SynBio applications. The outlook on SynBio, future SynBio considerations would be how to consider for risk assessment the design factor and the modeling to address safety issues, to incorporate the knowledge available for the design and modeling to enrich food and feed safety considerations, to have potential integration of alternative approaches for the safety and the nutritional assessment, and to consider additional uncertainties related to the potential adverse environmental effects in case of a SynBio plant for deliberate release. This is the last slide, and it summarizes how, since 2001, that the GMO directive has been in place, we have 2 decades of development, technological as well as in approaches. These have challenged the risk assessment methodologies, and they are considered so that the new challenges and definitions are revisited in order to be able to assess new traits, precision, biotechnology, that is by genome editing, as well as complexity of those traits. So it is important to see here that EFSA's risk assessment and the GMO panel risk assessment is never limited to the technique, but considers also the GMO under assessment with regards to the trait, the food and feed final product. Thank you very much.